CPA committee meeting of December 17th, and we have 2, 4, 6 members, which is a quorum. First items on our agenda is public comments. Is there anyone here from the public that wants to speak on something other than it's on the agenda? And it looks like most of you are probably here for the football, that's on the agenda, so. Approval of minutes, we have 2 sets of minutes. One was September 17th and one was October 15th, because we didn't have a November meeting. If I have this right, and Jamie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but on the 17th, the ones that were present and can vote are myself, Mr. Bruner, Mr. Hunter, Mr. Rowland, and Mr. Ryan. So I think we have enough, because we need 5 to pass it. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of September 17th.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from September 17th.
I'll second it.
We have a motion, a second, to approve the minutes of September 17th. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Now on to the minutes of October 15th. We have myself, Mr. Hunter, Mr. Rowland, Mr. Ryan, Mr. Schuman, and Mr. Sparkle. So Mr. Sparkle's not here. I think other than that, we have 5 for that one. So I'll entertain a motion on those minutes of the 15th.
I'll move to approve the minutes for October 15th.
I'll second
I have a motion, a second, for the minutes of October 15th. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Report from city officials, account balances. Jamie, you have, if you want to just
Sure.
quickly.
So, right now, as of last week, $60,000 was set aside for open space, $60,000 also in historic preservation, $161,000 for affordable housing, $615,000 for in the undesignated account, and $266,000 reserved, for a total of about $1.1 million.
Okay, sounds promising.
Yeah, and so that includes the, we did get the final numbers from the state match from fiscal year 2015.
Okay,
And so that was an extra $200,000. The CPA had budgeted for $152,000, so the difference of about $50,000 will show up at the end of the year after the city and the state finalize the free cash numbers.
Right.
Or
I know it's later in the year.
When
you
they
get
close the books,
Right,
that money becomes available.
so
because
we
it
won't
wasn't-
have that 50 or 60 till then.
Right, so that's set aside. It's also what the other.
Or this committee will have it.
Right, but it'll be there
Go
next
for
year.
next year's Christmas.
Anything else, Jamie?
Yeah, and we did have a discussion with the auditors about how the CPA appropriates money, but we can have that discussion after, unless you wanna have it.
No,
now.
we can go back to that.
And basically, the people at Department of Revenue are, they wanna see that the CPA is spending money from this year's budget before the CPA is spending money from the previous budgets, or the money that's been rolled over. So we have the 2 line items, the undesignated and the reserve fund, and they would prefer for the CPA to spend the reserve fund first,
Okay,
and then to go into the undesignated,
okay.
and the CPA has been spending the undesignated
First and keep it a reserve?
and keeping the reserve.
Okay.
Their point being that, why is the CPA setting a budget for the year, but then not appropriating any money out of it and using past year's money to, so the committee can still do whatever they wanna do,
But that's their recommendation.
but that's what they would like to see.
That's probably no sense.
Yep, I said I would pass it along.
On the, I want to commend you for the rules of the committee. I thought you did a good job. I don't know if, again, it's probably not something we're going to approve tonight. I will make a comment on, the only part I saw possibly that needs more discussion would be the rule around missing meetings.
Okay.
Because it just is kind of open-ended, just says if you miss 3 or more meetings, where if you look at the city charter, it's 3 or more consecutive meetings, and then, or all the meetings for 4 consecutive months, or half the meetings over 6 months, or, I mean, it has a little more frame.
Okay.
And then the other thing I would, and this against me, I'm not gonna be on the board, but I think we should look at, or you should look at the I don't know if we're different here because this board is a composite of all the other city boards, and I don't know, it might be something you could sit with the mayor and maybe even the city solicitor at some point. Does this board have the power, or can we, in other words, can we have the power to remove, and I'll just use Jay, but to remove
Right.
to remove the conservation.
How many
in other
hours you have? How many hours you have?
Hopefully less than an hour. So I have a couple weeks though left. But in other words, like, say you didn't start showing up, Jay, do we have the authority, because you're appointed by the Conservation Commission, not by the mayor or the city council, and then like, Mr. Rowland is by the city council, so, I don't know if that board, so I guess that would just be my answer that you'd probably want to look into.
Yeah, I mean,
And maybe you have, Jane.
my understanding was that rule about the removing members was for any multiple member board.
Yes, that's what it says.
And so, if the CPA committee wanted to remove a member, it wouldn't remove them from their appointed
Their
board,
appointed member
it would
from
just
their-
from this committee.
I guess maybe I would, again, it's up to you guys when you go forward, but I guess I would like to maybe, as a courtesy to the committees, maybe if you had someone who wasn't showing up, maybe to initially
Go back
put
to the
right in the
committee.
thing to send a letter
Right.
first to the committee or whoever the appointing body was,
Exactly.
like in Harry's case, to the planning board and say,
Just imagine getting in trouble
Harry's
there.
not showing up. So. But again, that's just my suggestion. On the flow chart, Jamie, the only one thing is, and it's not a big thing, on the, when you said it goes to the city council and then it can go to the finance committee and you said, I think you said optional. I don't know if you have the flow chart up there.
Yeah,
Just says optional.
I thought that's what you had told me, so that's what I.
No, it's
changed.
really not optional. I mean, the council rules say that it has to go to a committee. But the council, like everything else, has the right to, in other words, to suspend their rules and move it. They could suspend their rules and move it to the full city council. I guess on a flow chart, if you're going to give it to the public, I guess I wouldn't want to give people the false impression that, in other words, if they complain or whatever loud enough, say, why we said it here if it's optional. In other words, it's not really optional. It's only optional if the council foresees an emergency situation where they feel something has to be moved faster, that the council can suspend their rules. So I think I would just take the optional out, and that's always there. If you have, I mean, it's keep in the back of your mind if you had an incident where, or a project where you really wanted to fast track it a little more, you could go to the council and say, this, maybe because of weather or something, this has to be done or something. So you could try to avoid that. I don't know if they would do it or not. As I said, there, in all my 3 terms on the council, I'm trying to think if there was one time that something wasn't sent to a committee. I mean, it's that rare they suspend the rules. So anyway, just
All right,
my,
I'll update that, I just.
again, just my.
I think that makes sense, so I'll update it and resend it.
I don't know if anyone else has any comments before we get into the latest project or the newest project on any of those other items, the flow chart, Harry, or again, I think these are things that when I will say, talking to Council President McCoy last night, he did say that they already have 4 people interested in serving between the city council appointments and the mayoral appointments. They've already received 4 applications, so I think they will fill them. He didn't obviously go into who they were or anything, but so it looks promising that you won't start with I mean, you should at least have a full, complement, shortly into the. Moving on to new business, we have a new application for Whitebrook Middle School football field lighting. I don't know who wants to speak for, if the superintendent does, or
I think we have
our
Tom
designer
start out
here,
and,
Tom.
talk about
I remember you were here for the football
Yeah.
field itself. Before you go into that, if I can, because I know Ed asked, can you just tell us how everything went with the football? I know, there was one little bit of changes or some changes. I know the committee felt maybe we should have been notified or whatever, but,
Sure.
just if you kind of break that down fast for us, now we'll get ready.
Yeah, I'd be glad to, and I'm glad you asked. It was gonna be part of what I thought we could all talk about. I think it's been maybe a few years now, Jamie, when we first initiated discussions regarding an initial application that the Friends of Football had for improving and enhancing the only public football field that we have here in the city. And with the support, with the numerous discussions and lengthy informational hearings and talks about the project, and with the support of this committee and the city, we're really pleased to report that by all accounts, the project has been a tremendous success. We receive such great compliments from the visitors to our community, from other communities, especially those who had visited and played here in years before our improvement project, and just such great compliments on the workmanship, the attention to detail. And so many people in our community deserve the credit for that. I think it's really a great opportunity that we seized for the youth of our community, and a great place to be for these events. I think the the item you may be discussing was when we develop the drawings and the specs. Of course, when we go through this process, you don't always know what the bids are going to come in at. It's it's part of the nature of the public bid process. So when we had gotten the bids back, they were higher than the dollar amount that we asked this committee to approve. And largely what we had discovered in our discussions with the contractors, there were some, let me back up a little bit. The contract was put out with a relatively or very narrow window of time for the contractors to respond. And it was also coupled with the springtime where they were quite busy. So we felt like the timing might have been imperfect, but that almost most of the costs that represented what was over what we had originally estimated was largely due to miscommunication or misunderstandings between the low contractor and what the contract documents had said. I'll give you an example. An example was where they could haul the spoils, which is the cut to waste, the excess material from the field. They may have not understood that there was land behind the treehouse project that they could bring it to, which significantly decreased their haul distance. And the haul distance and finding a place, a private a receiving area for such waste was, that's expensive. So that took out a big portion of it. John Broder here is an engineer with Doucette and Associates. I work for the firm as well. And John deserves a lot of credit in clarifying these items to the contractor. Another example was the sub-drains, which run the long distance of the field along the long access. The contractor interpreted the depth of them to be something other than was intended. So through those discussions, that alone represented a $90,000 savings. So there's a few of these incremental things that by clarifying those items and then gaining input from the contractor in ways that he could deliver an equivalent performing field based upon his expertise and abilities, with maybe adding a little more crushed stone or a little more sand here and those kind of things, we think ended up resulting in a well thought out creative solution that achieved exactly the same intent and purpose as we were trying to do. And so that's how we were able to do it within budget and almost on time. So, but considering the scope of the work that was involved, the amount of time within which we were able to get it done, no cost overruns, we're proud to say that we feel we were good stewards of the trust that you put into our program for funding that very successful project. And that's why we felt comfortable in coming here and talking to you about this new exciting idea that we have that we think will further enhance the facilities that we have. So.
And Tom, I just want to add that I think since we have this new field, we see more and more of our community members attending the games and making use of the field, and that's wonderful for us. It's wonderful for our students, and I think it's wonderful for the community as well. Turned out beautifully. If you haven't seen it, I hope you'll make sure you do.
I know, Greg, you had a question of timing, or maybe it was Andy.
When was it completed?
It was completed. We used it this season, It was completed just after the beginning of the season. Although we had hoped to have all our home games there, we only missed one home game. The youth program didn't miss any home games. So that was just a matter of natural course of construction.
At the end of September, or beginning of October?
Yes, end of September.
It was completed at the beginning of September, but we wanted to keep everybody off of the field for at least 3 weeks to allow the sod to take. So that was really where the delay took a little bit longer with, you know, we had some rainstorms that kind of impacted their schedule. By the time it was awarded and everything else was a little bit late, so they were a little bit behind where they were hoping to be. We were hoping to have them start in May, and they honestly didn't start till the end of June. They did a great job. I mean, they worked hard, and you know, the field performed. I mean, there were several days where it rained on Friday night, and they played on Saturday, and the field did not tear up. Which, if you saw the old field, that just by the end of the season, the field was just gone. You know, and this year, by the end of the season, it looked as good as it did at the start. So.
And much safer for our students,
Yes.
student athletes.
So we were saying no cost overrun, is that right? That's, we're not saying that it was done with the amount that was originally approved from the CPA committee, is that right?
Correct.
Or you're saying that the original amount that we approved was the total cost of the field?
Correct.
That's right.
Right,
Plus
and plus what the
what we
Friends
put
put
in,
in,
yeah.
Right,
but
sure.
you didn't go over budget, it was just, you had to modify a little of
That's right.
the budget.
Oh gosh, well, so it was, because the number that I was hearing, you know, was
Was-
way beyond what we originally approved.
Well, I'll
Okay,
tell you, a
great.
few of those
So
key
good for
items
you.
though.
Yeah,
Yeah, a
sounds
few of
like it
those
made a
key
difference.
items just needed to be largely, for the most part, communicated.
And who was the contractor you worked with?
It was Mountain View Landscaping.
Any other questions about the past project before we get into the latest? Okay, Harry, no? Okay, just give me an opportunity, Harry.
No, I'm just glad we had an explanation as to what happened, that's all.
Okay, moving on to the new project, just, and Jamie can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but this project came in, so we have, it'd be funded by February, well, it can be funded as soon as February, correct? Jamie, is that,
Yeah, the current CPA cycle,
is,
you know.
you're in that?
Yeah, and like you had said with the city council, you know, you can.
Right, you can,
do
I know,
whatever
I
you
mean,
want, but-
when I say funded here, or the proposal funding here to go further will be done.
Yeah, and
Could be
typically
done.
the schedule the CBS set up was, the decision would be announced on in the February meeting,
Okay.
and then would be sent to city council for the process.
Just, again, it definitely won't be decided tonight, and as you probably heard some of the conversation, the committee's gonna change in January, so, you know, and probably work with Jamie, I don't know how that's all gonna evolve in terms of how much organizational meeting that'll be, or if they're gonna actually, I mean, most of the members are still gonna be here, right? It's just gonna be a couple of new ones, so I assume you can move to any further discussions that the committee would have. I mean, that would be my, in the January meeting I'm talking. It shouldn't all be organizational, should it? I mean, I wouldn't,
Yeah, I mean, I would assume.
wouldn't be that.
You just have to start with appointing a chair.
Right, exactly, that's right, so I don't think that should take those. Okay, if you could get, Tom, again, you wanna just explain the lighting, how many lights?
Sure.
You know, it looks like you want full funding, I know we're always looking for something, so, you know, obviously that's probably gonna get asked, but, you know, if you wanna just explain the scope of the project, how many lights and everything, appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I'd be glad to. In regard to funding it, you know, I know Amy's gonna wanna talk about that. We have, we've talked with Musco Lighting, which is one of the providers of state-of-the-art field lighting for this application. They're a very qualified organization. They do this. This is what they do, and they're one of the big guys. And we've worked with them closely in having them generate a drawing that would deliver lighting levels to what would be considered safe for high school and youth sports that night. And we're the design that you have as part of the application shows 4 of the large poles, each with, I think it's 6 lights on each of the poles, and they'd be configured in a fashion just you would expect. I think it's similar to what you would see at Williston or Westfield State University. We have the cost. They're I might not have the terminology perfect, but they would be considered a kind of a pre-approved state vendor of materials for this type of public project. So we have what their material quote is, and it's about $83,000 or so. We talked with a local electrical contractor who does a lot of Musco lighting, and we have their quote, and we added those to, and I think it was
Just for a second, so the lights themselves would be 83,000, like the
truck
the
pulls up to the
pulls
site.
up with, and now we're talking the hooking them up, right? The
That's
electrical
right,
part of it.
yeah. Conduits, tie in electrical to the school, run the electrical lines. If you remember, as part of the original project, we had put a conduit underneath the center of the field just in case, we were able to, pursue such a project. The cost for the installation and the foundation, excavation and those kind of things is around, the quote we have is about $65,000. And we know this has to go to public bid, but I tell you these things, we don't know exactly what the numbers will be, but we did research so that we could be knowledgeable and share that knowledge here with you. There would be site work added on top of that, not a lot, they'd have to remove the soil and loam and seed the areas that would be on top of. So we listed in our application $170,000 because we believe the price would be less than that. What we're really asking for is the cost of the project, and we think it's less than 170. And, so that's our basis for the number that we have.
What would be like your, I assume you would want this by next season, obviously.
Right.
What would be the time frame of doing all this? Did they give you a time frame for like how long it would take to install it? I mean, I wouldn't think it would be again, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not into buildings, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'd like to get back at the next meeting. I remember someone saying 4 weeks or something like that, but there would be lead time associated with ordering the poles, so I'd have to, it would definitely be before next season.
Committee, any questions, initial questions?
You kind of beat me to the punch when you mentioned that the conduits are already under the field. I guess I had forgotten that we had the foresight to put conduits under the field, so that's, and they're well located for where the intended poles for this project are
Right
going
down
to
the
go.
center, and they go to both sides.
Fantastic. Sounds wonderful.
Amy, did you have something from Friends of Football, or you just, no?
If you had questions of us, I think
Anyone else out there that's, is there any opponents out there? I don't, we often have both sides if there's,
everybody's all for it.
I can make a comment.
Could you identify yourself for the?
Don Broder.
And you are a resident or?
Yeah, 2 Sterling Drive.
Go ahead, Don.
Oh, okay.
Right, he just has to put that, he just has to put that in the minutes.
Black sweater.
Back in my younger days, Cosette and I, Cosette's my wife, and I played football for Chicopee High School. And at Zott Park, it was always Saturday games. And it was, it was good to play on Saturday and all that, but in my junior year, they put in lights on Friday night, and it just was a transformation for the whole city of Chicopee. I mean, football was big, but it just got bigger. It was a phenomenal thing. Seems like every kid in the world wants to play under the lights, and that's where I think we're at right now. We got a great bunch of little kids coming up. High school, my grandson's in high school now, and he plays football for Easthampton, and I know he would be excited to play under lights. And because they go to other towns, Northampton, and everybody's got lights. And we're the only ones in the dark,
Just to show that I did read the proposal. It said that Cathedral and yourself were the only two that, in your particular league, that don't, and you're assuming,
in the
and
high school division.
you're assuming, and right, that probably Cathedral would put them in, yes, in your
It is.
division.
In our division, actually, we just changed, they moved us up,
Oh.
and we now are playing against teams like Northampton, and
We are the only ones without lights.
So now
we are the only
now
ones
you're
now without
now you're
lights. And, you know, to speak to what Don just said, and Amy Guy at Easthampton Friends Football, this is a huge community building thing. We do get a fair amount of people that come on Saturdays, but a Friday night game, it would just, bring that many more people out. It would be the thing to do. There would be something for kids to come and do. It would increase the gate for the athletic department, so that would help for them. It would help keep kids who might want to think about transferring out of school. If you have a great football program, may encourage them to stay at, you know, Easthampton High. You know, I can't see it being a negative anywhere, but I am a little biased.
Yeah. Would it be used for anything other than the varsity, or like at night, the lights? I'm not saying the field, I know you use it, so that'd be pretty at just the high school.
Yeah, just the varsity teams. I would think
Later
that,
in the season.
yeah, we may use it for practices, and once the season gets, you know, once it gets dark, and they're still practicing and it's dark, so there may be some nights that would be used during the week for practices. Although we do ask the kids, and the coach has been great about, we try to keep people off the field as much as possible, because we don't wanna be overusing it. Even though it's a great field, too much use will just kill it.
And I think Patty Dougherty, the athletic director, said that she does have problems now with, particularly in the fall, when it starts getting dark so early, making sure that, you know, their practices or whatever they're doing.
Right, and JV teams, our JV plays on Monday afternoons, and when it gets dark so early, it's really hard to get a whole game in after school, because you have a team traveling, and then, you know, you have to start it right away, or they run out of daylight and can't play, so it may be used for JV games on Mondays. But we would ask the youth love to play at least one of their season games under the lights, so.
Harry has a question.
Yeah, how would that lighting affect them? It's a school budget. How much is that gonna cost to put the lights on? Anybody think of that?
Well,
We've thought of it. We don't have the figures for that. But we believe it's very important. It's very important to us and to our school district. And I think, as Amy mentioned, I mean, there are possible, the gate would probably be increased with the football program on Friday nights. And I think it would help us keep our students here in Easthampton, which is, I think you all are aware, is a huge drain to our district when they move out of district and take funds with them. So I think there would be an offset that would be make it an even proposition.
What's the breakdown of the team? Don't you have Southampton kids on there too?
We do.
What's the breakdown, Southampton and Easthampton?
Changes every year. This year was about 60-40, 60% Easthampton, 40% Hampshire. But it really varies year to year.
Do you know, Tom, what you were talking, like turning it on maybe for the JVs? Is there you know, when I've gone to some sporting events and the lights go out, they got to recharge them? Is there maybe this is something you don't know and can find out for the next meeting? In other words, how long does it take to bring the lights up? You know what I'm saying? I don't imagine it's instantaneous. Maybe it is today. I mean, everything's changing so much with stuff. I mean, I don't.
I'll research that and find
For
out
the
a
next
little
meeting.
more. It hadn't come up in our
Yeah, I
discussions
just-
with the
it
company.
just-
It's a good question.
It just, you know, when you said, you know, I mean, if it's getting dark, you would have to know how long before, you know,
Right,
you get thrown
exactly,
out. If
yeah.
it takes, you know,
Yeah.
15 minutes, obviously you can't switch it in.
Yeah.
Any other questions tonight for?
No, we're always looking for matching funds or things like that, so is there any other kind of grant money for this kind of a program out there that we could get some of that money, we would match it, or put in 80%, that puts in 20%, things like that?
You know, of course, we're a nonprofit organization, and our money comes from the user fees of the youth folks, that the cheerleaders, and they sell calendars, and, you know, we sell snacks, and that's primarily how we make our money, but.
But is there any kind of state money out there that,
Yeah.
Not that we've been,
Yeah.
I've searched and searched and searched for different things, but even back when we were looking for field money, no, not that we've ever been able to find.
right, okay.
I think it's important also to keep in mind the in-kind contributions from Friends of Football, and Amy and Tom, you might wanna talk about that a little bit.
When we started with the field project, we did offer, or we did pledge to maintain the field, and we were just talking about that. We're looking at between $5,000 and $8,000 or more $1,000 a year just for field maintenance. So, you know, there's that we would be giving back every year. We just put in a brand new scoreboard that was $18,000? Yeah, $18,000. Besides just giving to the actual facility, we just bought helmets for the players, we bought the new uniforms for the players. If Patty needs something, she calls us, shoulder pads, I can't, just all the time. Yeah, an iPad, new headsets for the coaches, we pay for the busing, we pay the difference. Strong will not allow the football players to go on a school bus because of safety reasons, they have too much equipment. So they require a coach bus.
Actually, coach.
EFFA pays the difference between what a school bus would cost and what a coach bus costs. Strong has now, last year, and I think that they've gotten worked out, but they were requiring a coach bus for the JV team, which again, we were paying for. So, you know, I don't have an actual figure of how much we pay, but off the top of my head, it's probably close to 20% of what those lights are gonna cost, you know, so.
Any other questions tonight, or?
So that, who turns these lights on, and where is the switch for the light? I mean, how does that work? I mean, I know where the lights are going to be located, but can anyone just,
No, my
Turn on
thought
the
would be, it would
switch.
be in the shack,
Mhm.
which is that big, AKA the field house, the snack shack. My thought would be, it would probably be in there,
Yeah.
or in a locked box.
Yeah, we still have the flexibility for a few of these kind of
decisions?
committee decisions. It would definitely be hardwired into the school, and whether there's an interception switch at the snack shack, that's a final decision that I think the leadership would kind of make on that.
But it certainly wouldn't be anywhere that Joe Schmo can come along and flip a switch.
Yeah, I figured.
Just that they want to play frisbee on the football field.
I'm just thinking about the total usage of the lights being on, you know, getting to Harry's question a little bit about energy, you know.
I'm sure the lighting company can provide that
Who,
number.
who decides, you know, how many afternoons during the week it's on for the teams that are playing late, and how late can they play, and is that gonna increase demand for pushing practices further back because you have the capacity suddenly to do that? But it sounds like the main beneficiary is the Friday night, you know, football game under the lights, which sounds fantastic. Are there any other sports besides football that would be benefiting from a lighted field?
There's potential for that, but at this point, I don't know that, you know, we could say definitively. That would be something that the athletic director would look into.
You do have a track there, which is sort of an old non-track.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
The position of the lights are right on the perimeter of that track, based on, is that
Behind.
sort of what I'm looking at?
Yeah, it's behind.
Is, if you, at any time in the future, wanted to revitalize that track for whatever athletic program here in Easthampton, would you be able to, with the position of these light posts?
Yeah.
I mean, would
They're
you be able to have
located-
a full-size track, or, because right now it's, I'm just asking, having been
Yeah.
over there,
Well,
I
we're
think it's a
kinda
pretty narrow
bound.
track, but.
You know, on the south side, we're bound, you know, where the snack shack in the stands are.
Yeah.
If we were gonna upgrade the track to the coordinates that it is now, I see no reason we wouldn't be able to it. If we had to you know, if we had to encroach going inward a little bit, maybe that's a possibility, but, you know, we haven't laid the track out as though it would be a conforming, high school athletic event sort of track, so.
Just throwing it out there,
Yeah.
knowing that this is a football field that is inside of what used to be an operating, you know, 400-yard or 400-meter track. It's a nice potential benefit long-term for the school. I'm not suggesting that this happen, but I'm just saying that if somebody wanted it to happen in the future and wasn't able to on account of the position of these leg posts, it would be just something to you know, I'm just raising the question now, since we're early on in the process.
It would seem to, you know, be something that we could also talk with Musco, because when we go to football games, they all have the Musco lights, and they're all located outside of a track. I'd say over 3/4 of the fields have a track around the perimeter. So we can talk to them and say, what's the normal offset from the center line of a field around the track of normal size? Because, you know, I know that the cinder track is a small track. You know, it's not, and we can see if we can fit. I can imagine that, you know, the
I'm not sure it would
footprint's
ever
there.
be an 8-lane track, you
No.
know, based on the size of the field, but, you know, I don't know. what
It
it
still
be.
might even be able to, you know, again, it's.
Yeah, I just try to think long-term, you know, sort of
There's-
unintended
That's
consequences
actually-
of something, you know,
Excellent.
and honestly, the parameters of the project and the specs are not really necessarily within our scope, but on some level, for the overall benefit of the citizens of Easthampton, I kind of want to raise that issue.
Well, why don't let us talk with them and see, can't imagine it'd be much of an adjustment, and we could report back to you at the next meeting.
I've never been up there, so I really don't know, so this may sound really crazy, but, at one time, would you want bleachers put in there?
Oh, that's on our list.
Well,
Don't you worry.
why don't you,
This is phase 2.
what you
You
get-
can see in our face.
You're gonna be coming this way again anyway, so why don't you, I'm not gonna say include bleachers with this, but, you know, just give us an idea what would be going on with that.
Sure.
Because if you're gonna be coming down here looking for bleachers, we'll say in a couple of years or a year, if we did it all together at once, we could probably save money in the long run.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So if you're talking, I'm not sure what bleachers cost, or I have no idea. But in the long run, I think we'd be better off doing it all at once and getting it over with, and saving money.
I mean, we can come back with field houses,
I mean,
with
what-
restrooms.
What does everybody think about that idea?
The sewers down there now, you know, the bathrooms.
Do you think that's crazy, or what do you think?
Well, the main question I would have is there anything about the bleachers that would interfere with, or
The track?
is there anything that needs to be taken into consideration early on? If you're planning that direction, can you do work now that makes sure that it doesn't inhibit anything you wanna do later?
It's in our, when we look at all of this, we
You got a
have a big picture in mind, and we are very clear thought about, okay, so this is gonna go here, because eventually we want some stadium seating here, and then we can tie this in there, and, you know, so.
I'm just trying to save some money, that's all I'm trying to do.
I'm trying, yeah, and we
You know,
want a great
We
field.
can do
so-
that.
If you're coming back, when do you think that would possibly happen, a year, 2 years, what do you think, down the road? for
We like our
bleachers?
annual meetings.
So you think about a year from now, be back here knocking on our door again?
Could we?
I don't know what you guys think about that, but if we could do everything at once, we could actually save cash.
Well, we should verify that in that one's a lighting project.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
wonder
I mean, I'm
in
like-
what way-
Right,
bring
do you
that
say
up.
that,
Do,
or is
yeah.
it two?
Might be two completely different
Right.
Okay.
teams of people.
Would it be?
I mean, I don't know if it was, you know, when we were talking of combining the soccer and the baseball, I mean, there was a
Yeah.
little bit of,
Yeah.
I mean, the grading and the landscaping was kind of the same for both. This sounds like almost two
Well,
different.
two different projects, with random.
I mean, I have no problem if, again, I'm not gonna be here, but if the, you know, like, to start scope, you know, specking out how much bleachers are, so if it's something you could bring maybe to the next, I mean, if, you know, you have a month to.
Yeah, at least give us an idea.
Give an idea, I mean, it's, you know, what the.
We could do a sketch. I think we had a discussion about this the last round, where we were talking about from a planning perspective, how that could look. So I can bring that sketch and show conceptually, I'll show you what, you know, what we estimate that number would be, and then we can all talk about it.
And that was my one thought here is, you know, if they're looking to put lights and expand the gate, they don't necessarily at this point know
Yeah.
what
the
that
gate
expansion looks like. And
Yeah.
they may actually go through a cycle before they say, okay, well, we want bleachers that are this size, or we
Yeah.
want, 2 sets of bleachers, or
Yeah.
we want, whatever it might be, so. I'm not sure the cost savings it's kind of up to you guys, I guess, to.
It does cause me to wonder, is there anything about the bleachers that would affect the lighting? So does the lighting position or aiming need to change in order to accommodate the bleachers? I'm assuming the bleachers aren't so tall, but just as an example, you could have a situation where erecting the bleachers cast shadows into places where you were trying to light them and there wasn't a problem before,
So you'd be building up bleachers around the lights rather than the lights around the bleachers.
well, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you put it this way,
Yeah.
I'm assuming we'll be a lot less sympathetic to another approach for money if it's, we need to move the lights or change the
Yeah.
lights now that we built the bleachers. So
Right, right.
that's what I'm thinking of.
Right,
Mhm.
yeah, good point.
And Todd, could you get, because Harry does have a good question, because the community is very concerned about energy these days. If you could get some of what the draw is for these lights, in other words, and then we could probably, or, work on what the cost per hour would be. And again, I'm not saying, because obviously electric rates change and.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah, it has, in the sidebar.
Does it say?
Right,
Maybe
sure.
it
It
does.
does give, yeah.
I was doing it on my iPad and it's
Yeah.
kind of small with my eyes even. I need a magnifying glass to see something.
The green generation light type, which I'm not familiar with, but it's obviously, I assume, newer and better than the old sodium or
Right.
whatever it was, gas.
Which
lights,
might also
which-
come out quicker, because those are, I think, the ones that used to come up with you.
Yeah.
So, just a question for the next meeting. Again, any more questions by the committee tonight? Or-
And one last,
Oh, go ahead.
Maintenance of the lights would be nice too, to find out what their longevity is for lights replacement, that type of thing.
Like bulbs, yeah. that
I
type of-
believe it's 10-year warranty on bulbs.
On bulbs.
It says though that the usage per light is 5,000 hours.
Correct.
So-
I think it's warranted for 10 years, but if you actually do the math on how long they'll last, it's longer than 10 years, because it's based on 5,000 hours.
Yeah, and it lasts forever from that.
Yeah,
The scan average, 3.4 for the entire grid, is that, the entire grid means all the way outside the track here? So we're not talking about the gridiron grid, right? Like not the field scan
Right,
average.
you're talking about the lighting levels, and they should change as it goes around the perimeter.
Do we know the scan average for the actual playing field?
It should be what the levels are, and they'll be slightly different, and I think those are foot candles.
correct.
So the numbers should be estimated exactly at the point where they are.
I got nothing actually on the field here.
That's the spillover table, actually. The field is designed, I believe, at 30-foot candles. That's the high school lighting levels.
Is that our unit here when we're saying 3.4 scan average is the foot candles? Or the,
That, I believe would,
whatever you said?
yeah, this is, let me see, what is it? Is that the spillover table? Because they're not showing the field. I know the field is.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, name, if you look at it, the name says 150-foot spill. So we had asked them what the light spillover was.
Oh, that's right, it was a 30-foot.
30-foot candles.
30-foot
It's an
candles.
average of 30-foot candles, so could be greater, but the average is a minimum of 30-foot candles. That's high school level lighting.
Yeah. I was trying to get a sense of the difference in lighting from the corner of the end zone to the,
Well, you can
30 or
see
40
that
yard
because
line.
the field itself is gonna be 30. If you look at that, it says max on this particular table, 29 and
Yeah.
29.23.
3.
So you can see that the track, the outline is the outside of the track.
Yep.
So everything inside, 7, 8, 9.6, 4, 9.2, 19, that's all, those are actually the foot candles measured at that spot.
Yeah, yeah. So you're looking at 5.7 in the corner of the end zone, and then
Correct, and
28.5. So you're saying it's 5 times brighter and more part of
correct,
the field
everything's
than-
pointed towards the middle of the field to get a 30-foot candle minimum.
Commercial park.
Thank you. Just trying to interpret I mean, sort of my own edification. Thank you for entertaining that.
You know, like a commercial parking lot, maybe a 3-foot candle, that's what they would want for a safe lighting level for someone walking back to their car from the store. Put it in perspective.
And car dealerships are somewhere around 10, you know,
Right.
that was brighter.
Make that car look shiny.
Exactly.
Anything else tonight? Okay. The next meeting, again, I assume everyone's gonna have that, is gonna be January 21st. That'll be a Thursday at 6:30. And you know the questions, Tom, that we had. Anything else? If any of the committee members have anything before that, if we can get it to Jamie, I'm sure she can get it out to Tom. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other business, Jamie? Anything we want to go back to? Or?
Do only if you guys want to discuss, if you want to discuss the rules in more detail or this draft of the appropriation request. This was sort of, at the last meeting, we were trying to figure out how the committee wanted to do conditions or limitations or some sort of like the funding contingent on something, how that gets communicated from the committee to the city council to the so that it gets passed along. It's not just the motion for funding that gets passed along.
We were going to pass along a recommendation that if something changed beyond a
Yeah,
certain
major
threshold or
or
something
yeah,
like that,
if the
that
budget changes by
please
10%.
please notify the CPA committee or bring it back to us or something like that. I think that was kind of the gist of it, right?
Right, so, well, I mean, so there was no sort of, there was nothing resolved.
There was nothing
so.
resolved. No, I
And
agree.
so, it was sort of, I felt that there was, you guys asked me to sort of come up with something, so what I did
You
is.
had a letter.
Yeah, so this is, this letter that typically goes to the mayor from the planning department just says generally, the committee voted on this date to provide funding for this project and get a brief scope of work. And then that's what the committee, the finance committee would get, and Dan usually would then bring along the application and any, submittals that were submitted after the application was originally submitted. This, I added some, it sort of like made it more clear, so that, I don't know if everyone saw it.
I read it. I just found the one here in the packet.
Yeah.
So we can say whatever conditions we think that project might need.
Right, and so I could, give the committee members for each application, you could have this, and it would give you something to look at and sort of say, okay, have we discussed the conditions? What are the ones that we actually want to set for this project? And then that can be part of the motion that gets sent to the mayor and gets sent to the city council. And so so maybe it's more clear that the intent was, because we have our standard boilerplate for a grant agreement, and we can add language to the grant agreement as well. But if there are specific things that were, for each project, this would give the committee a way to communicate those separately from just that generalized 10% change, which we still needed to figure out what that wording would be.
So that would be under conditions, stipulations, restrictions. We'd say, in this instance, we would request a change of more than 10%.
Right, that's right.
Et cetera, et
And
cetera.
that would leave it open-ended, so depending on the project, you could do
Be very-
more or less,
sure.
depending, if it's kind of a straightforward project versus something that would be maybe, I have no problem with this document. I think it's a great document. I would definitely, again, if you guys want to make a motion to approve this, or wait till the next meeting.
I must be really sort of dense this evening. All right, so can I just be kind of clear on this? That
Mhm.
this letter is going to the mayor, right?
Yes,
But but what we're saying is the conditions would be part of the grant itself. Like when we approve the project, we approve it with explicit conditions,
Right.
rather than a sort of a default of, in the event this project goes over by 10%, please bring it back, or something like that. So we would, for every project that we're approving, we're opting into certain terms and conditions for it coming back to the committee. Is that?
But that makes this a little more flexible because we could, the moral equivalent of doing what we sort of thought we were doing would be that we just always say 10%,
The same thing all the time,
10%,
but maybe we don't wanna say the same things, it
Right.
gives us a little
It
flexibility.
gives more flexibility,
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
It's a little like the planning.
But I guess I'm curious, is there a default, or are we, because what happens when you approve a project and you forget to set conditions as part of the conversation for, or part of the motion to approve or whatever?
Then you have
It's not built into the application,
Then
right?
you have-
So,
then you have
and
problem.
and
If
that's
you were on
sort of
the
why I
planning board, that would
was
never
saying, if
Never.
one of these forms, if the chair has this form, or if the person making the request has this form, they would know that, we need to talk about what are the conditions that we're agreeing to this, like, before we make the motion to grant, what are the conditions that we're agreeing to, and what are the conditions that the applicant is also agreeing to, so it's discussed here, everyone's on the same page, and then it's added to that. And it's not like, oh, we thought you would come back to us, or, in the case of the football program list, the grant agreement is only drafted and signed and approved after the city council authorizes the funding. So in this case, this would stay with the project all through the funding appropriation process.
so this gets passed on past the mayor to the finance committee.
Stays in the package.
This is
This
what,
would be before it even gets
this is what gets from.
sent to the mayor. and
Sent to
then
the mayor, and the mayor literally
Okay, I didn't realize this document
stamps
continues
received on
to
it,
be
and then
included
gives
in
it
the
to,
package.
gives it to the city council, and the city council then makes sure that this is what goes to the finance subcommittee, and the finance subcommittee looks at it and makes their request, or makes their recommendation.
Yep.
And then I'm not sure if every committee member of the council gets it when you actually get your vote, or,
Oh, no, they get the whole.
They get the whole
They get the whole
packet.
packet, because
And
they have
which
a right
include-
at the full public hearing to, doesn't always get approved unanimously. Sometimes people are against a project or for a project or against it. But certainly, I have no problem if you want to wait till, really, maybe you gotta have a new chair and everything in January, but I do think in fairness, we keep kicking some of this stuff down the road, so.
I think
I mean,
we
this
should- I
is-
think we
this-
should vote on this thing.
Yeah, no,
This-
I'm
this
ready
is
to close
really-
the book on
yeah.
this.
That's what I said,
tonight.
we've kicked it down the road.
Yeah.
We still have the option of
And you can change it.
over time, working on our language so that we might have some sort of boilerplate statement that we always put there as a default, but it gives us, the thing I like about the way you've done it, Jamie, this gives us flexibility if there is something that is conditional to a particular project. So,
And we can try it out over the next couple of grant
Yeah.
things.
And then can always, by the rules, if you approve, now the rules, I think, are something that really should wait because that's like 5 pages and come back, if there's any changes you want, to come back to Jamie and make those recommendations, but once those rules are set, you can change this at any time if you get a majority vote to, if it doesn't work or you want to make modifications to it, all you need is 5 votes to modify it, so.
Well, I'd like to suggest we put something in place tonight.
Yeah, I have no problem, I'm talking to I was kind of mixing apples and oranges, I think this should be approved tonight. I'm just saying that I'm not so sure you want to approve the 5 pages of CPA rules, if you
right.
miss meetings, you're tossed and all that, I think you might
No,
want.
you could,
I'm just talking about this.
sorry,
Oh, go
if
ahead.
you wanna have that discussion, can we just sort of stay on track?
No,
for this one?
absolutely.
Let's just pass this thing, huh?
That's fine, I have no problem.
We're going around, let's just
Yeah,
get a nitty
Make a
gritty.
motion and,
I'll make a motion that we pass as submitted.
any second?
I'll second it.
What's the motion?
We have a motion, a second, to approve this form letter
Form
that's,
letter to the mayor.
that would go to the mayor at the start of the process, which would lay out the project's name, location, scope, applicant's name, total funding, CPA accounts, and conditions, stipulations, and restrictions
For all CPA projects.
for all
Yes,
CPAs.
yeah.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now getting back to the rules.
I knew it was-
Oh, I'm sorry.
I knew it was letting that one go.
Who seconded?
Harry.
Can I propose that we put in place a default condition stipulation for this also? Just so we have something in place. We can always change it, we can always, I think it offers, as Chase mentioned, flexibility. But it also, I feel like we're kicking the discussion down the road again to sort of come back to what, one sentence thing we may wanna have in here as a, unless there's a
Well,
lot of
we
discussion.
develop it over a couple of, grants that we do.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering about, since sometimes, you think you've got it.
Fine
and
tune
then-
it over
yeah.
a course of a couple
That's kind of
projects.
right.
Works for me, that's fine, no, that makes sense.
When we have a specific project, I'm assuming we'll get to specific language, and I assume that would have something of the nature of the scope of the project and a rough percentage, if this changes by more than, we've been saying 10%,
Right.
Whatever it is.
Maybe that's too small. Should-
Yeah, and that there's something in the language that says that this is the gist of it, and if you understand the gist, and that something changes, because you can't say radically. The way, if I were using common language, I'd say if anything changes radically, we should come back, but obviously that.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you can't have somebody come down with a bid for say for 150,000, and they know they can raise it by 10%, so I'm not gonna tack on another 15
That's what's good about
grand.
this, is
Yeah.
because then we can vary it and say
Yeah.
like, okay, in this instance, we're gonna say more or less.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking for
We bring in
170,
track record.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be like, 184, whatever's gonna be done on the road, I mean.
Yeah, again, I commend you for the thought, because I was thinking sort of, now it would be one rubber stamp statement, but this is more powerful.
You could also give Harry 10% less, and say you could.
Yeah, they're coming 10%. You're not gonna see less. That way you'll never see less.
That's why I said maybe you wanna give them the 10% less and put it up to the one side, I'm just using this.
I wish Sparko was there, you'd tell you about
Sparko with 15%.
He'd be banging on that table over there.
But again, I think, since we approved this already, I think we should leave it open-ended, and you guys, as you see a project, try a couple projects, and then move from there, I mean, some projects you may not wanna put any conditions or stipulations for, depending if it's a simple, we've had some relatively simple projects like the clock.
I'd say time constraint.
This
I
particular.
had to get that in
You had
once,
to do it.
I had to do that once.
This particular document, though, is essentially, it's from the committee to the mayor, and it goes along with it.
Well, it's really,
With the
it's really an administrative thing, because,
But
this is what the planning department, this is the memo that we've put, that we've been using, just without the specifics of where each of those is indented.
Yeah.
We just said, this is the
This
project.
is the project.
And, it's the committee's responsibility to get this to the mayor, so because I work with the committee, this is the memo that I've sort of worked up
Oh, yeah,
to
and-
communicate it, but it's not really, the committee can sort of take it on and say, this is the memo that we wanna use, but it comes from me at the planning department, as the, sort of the coordinator to the,
Yes, you're the conduit between.
Yeah, you wanna explain something to me?
But I honestly, I was just trying to kind of address the concern about what we're signaling to applicants, and this page really is not something that applicants typically would see. Is that what I'm understanding? So, because, that's part of the concern is, you say, 10% or whatever it might be for a project, are we signaling to folks that unacceptable overage is X, or
Exactly.
green light
Exactly.
for that, and
Exactly.
I just
So
wanted,
that's
I wanted to
what I was
raise,
trying to
I
make.
wanted to better understand, that this is sort of essentially with the packet that moves along from planning to mayor to city council, but this isn't something that ends up sort of part of the proposal or back in the hands of
Where
the
they're getting
applicants
the idea that
themselves.
they got a 10%
Where we're,
contingency.
where
Yeah, they
we're
gotta push it, right? Their
inadvertently
little bonus,
suggesting
10%
to them
bonus,
that
you know?
10% is acceptable, or whatever, whatever
I
we
see
end up
what you
putting there. And so that's, I guess, reassuring for me, that we can have that conversation in front of them, saying, when we're approving the project, we're gonna have stipulations and conditions and so forth. but they don't end up coming, taking this home with them and being like, oh, guess what?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would think that if you're saying that we're gonna need, this project has a 10% overage or whatever you're calling it, they're here, they're present, they're listening to the conversation, and then that's getting transmitted. So
No, but the sort of the tone of that conversation is unmediated when they're here in the room versus having something that's just a single sentence here as a stipulation. I think it can be kind of, they can take the ball and run with it a little bit with just a sentence here where if the context of the conversation here is, clearly we've seen some issues with this in the past and we expect that we're not going to be seeing
It
anything.
doesn't mean we're gonna give them 10% more.
No, absolutely not.
We're just looking for, hey,
It's all
And
rest of it.
this isn't a mandate. We have no teeth. I think we had this
Yeah.
conversation. This
Right.
is just a recommendation along as the process
That
continues.
if they don't meet these conditions, that you'd like to hear from them and why they're not. I mean,
Yeah,
it's kind of.
yeah. No, it's a nuanced difference, Jamie, but I think it's important. So. All right.
You wanna explain something to me?
I'll try, Harry.
The clock, we can't answer your question about the clock here.
No. It goes from the CPA, right? Why does it go to the council, then back to the council of finance, and then back to the council again? Why doesn't it go from here to the council of finance committee, then go to the council, and that's the end of it? Why does it have to go back and forth like twice?
Well, I mean, that's just the council rules, that anything that's brought to the city council, whether if it's a financial issue, it goes to the council and they vote then to send it what committee it should go to. So if it's a financial matter, it goes to the city council finance committee. If it's an ordinance, somebody wants to change an ordinance and it goes to the city council sends it to the ordinance committee. If it's a public safety issue, they send it to the public
Right,
safety
so in
committee.
this case, it goes to
And then the subcommittee is tasked with coming up with a recommendation and then sending it back.
So if the town council gets an appropriation, then they figure, well, if it's worth it, then they send it to you guys, and then you guys send it back to them, what's
It's-
the figure?
it's
what
just
the
the front
figures
door.
are.
It's
They're using
automatic.
the
When
It's like,
the first meeting, it's automatic, Harry. In other words, if something is proposed, they never kill it there. They send it immediately to the
Look at
subcommittee.
it, right.
In other words, say, okay, subcommittee, that's you
then they
three
give it-
councilors are tasked with finance.
I get it.
Go down, look at it, and bring it back to the full city
I'm just
council.
trying to figure a way I went back and forth like 2 or 3 times. there.
That way you don't beat it to death.
Right,
And council members don't get blindsided by things coming out of committee that they know nothing about.
right. And they have time. And,
You know, I mean, I think it would be more efficient in some ways, but it's
Yeah.
the front door. The
Yeah.
front door is the city council.
Kind of easy it on them,
That's right. It's a slow moving body.
No reason to rush.
Anything else, Jamie, tonight? And again, I would.
Do we have a chair?
You don't have a chair. I mean, you can, I don't know if you can vote a chair. You should really probably wait till
Trump,
the new.
no way.
Trump might-
He's busy.
The only thing I would,
Everything's going to be great if Trump is chair.
I think it'd be
I
great.
promise you.
Yeah,
I think it'd be
you'll
great.
promise us too.
It'll be great.
Excellent.
You'll be the best chair there ever was.
I would think where you're gonna have a couple of new members, you probably would wanna elect the chair at the next meeting. I mean, that would be probably the first order of business, I would think, if you get done with that. is
Who's
just
going
elect the
to
chair.
introduce
Who's
that
gonna
order of
put their-
business?
So, I mean, this would be something for you guys to think of.
Who's putting their head in the noose?
Well, I don't know, it's up to you
Who
guys.
calls the meeting?
Well,
If we don't have, that's
Well,
a
no,
good
no, so
question.
I'm just saying, if,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
a
like,
good
I mean, you can make a chair tonight, I mean, I don't, again, I don't know,
Did you ever see a chairless chair?
I mean, is anyone present? I mean, I don't necessarily think one of the new members should be the chair. I mean, I don't know for sure who the city councilor is. I think there's a couple that I know want to be on finance, such as Councilor Riss, maybe he wants it. But again, I don't necessarily think he would want to chair it. I mean, because he has never sat, I think, in all his time. He's been on finance, but he hasn't sat on this particular committee. I mean, I think.
well, it's just a practical question, knowing that we don't have a chair for the next meeting.
Right. I mean, if someone here is
Who runs- who
interested, I
runs
mean,
the
I
next
certainly
meeting?
think, you know,
Would Jamie do it until we get a chair?
No, I can't.
He can't really do it.
I'm not on the committee, so,
No, you can't chair it, but can't you?
Call it to order.
I mean, I can,
No, I think she
I can file an agenda on behalf of the committee.
Right.
Without,
Or we could
without,
approve an interim, maybe? Is that an
And-
option? Do an interim?
well, I mean, if someone, I mean, I think if someone's interested here, I don't think you know, you could always change the chair. I mean, it's
Well, you know, I guess there are meetings where the chair just can't be present, and in those meetings, somebody else just starts the meeting, right?
Dan Hagan was the
And
vice, Dan Hagan was
So
vice
Bob is the
chair
vice chair,
when
he's chair.
Alexis was
Left.
chair.
Oh, we have a vice
Yeah,
chair.
so
too.
that was the election
So
of
who's the
chair and
vice chair
vice
now?
chair.
we didn't have one
No
because
one.
I was the vice chair and I moved him to the.
You're both.
Right.
You're leaving.
I'm leaving. But I mean, if one of you guys want it, I mean, certainly, I mean, maybe you'd like it, Greg, and, you know, I'm sure these guys would be glad to vote
No,
you
I'm
in.
tapped, I'm tapped, thank you though.
But, I mean, I don't see a problem with Jamie setting the agenda and then, you know, you guys knocking it all out on the first meeting. I mean, I don't think, hopefully nothing else, I mean, something else could come in, but it's, Jamie can certainly set the agenda.
Right.
And-
I mean, and I'll put it as the first.
And put it as the first item.
The first
election.
agenda item is.
I mean, that's how
elect the chair.
I mean, I already know who's gonna be the council president, but there's no council president until their first meeting. Once they get sworn in, they go downstairs and they elect the chair. That's the, you know, the council president. They elect the council president makes the subcommittee vote. So it's always done when that new group comes in.
There you go, well, that's how it'll be done, I guess.
So, but you guys can think about which one would like to serve, you know.
Harry.
Nope. I mean, I think, you know, any of you would be great if you wanted to do it.
It won't cut into your golf game, at least not in the winter months.
If there's nothing else, I'll take
So
a
can
motion.
I-
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
Was there, if there was any comments about that draft rules, other than what Dan had brought up?
Yeah, I mean,
Because
again,
if there are, I can make changes and then I can have that,
Right.
if that's something that the committee wants to discuss in January, I can make those changes and resubmit it so that so all the new members at least have an idea that
of
like.
what you might want to.
I mean, not that they're like official, but at least that the committee's seen it and is generally good with most of the recommendations, it just hasn't been officially approved yet.
Can I ask a question just on quorum size?
Mhm.
So if we have, for whatever reason, at some point vacancies, let's say 2 or 3 vacancies on this, and we end up with 6 people, the quorum says 5. Is it really a quorum, I'm used to a quorum being the majority of members, but here it explicitly says quorum is 5.
Yeah, and so that comes from
Is that from
the city's enabling legislation, which comes from the state's enabling legislation,
that's my
which
question.
does specifically say that a quorum has to be present, and and the city has said that a quorum is the majority of the total number of members, regardless of how many are appointed or seated. The exact language is.
So it would have to be 5 because there's 9 slots. So
Right.
even if there's only 8, like right now.
Well, the
we
number
only
that are
put-
seated or the number that are, you're saying a majority of the total
9.
possible
Yeah,
number on the
yeah.
committee?
So
Which
it's like-
actually does mean that the opportunity exists that if 2 people left, we wouldn't be able to vote to solve the problem because we couldn't have a quorum.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I mean, you would have to get down to 5, so I mean, you in a sense would have to get down to.
Right,
Well, you
so-
wouldn't have to get down to 5, you'd have to get down, but then you have,
You- but
somebody
then you
can't
would-
show or whatever, and you
Right.
suddenly don't
And-
have
right.
enough people
And to
to.
pass anything, you would, if you got down, say, to 6, you'd have to have 5 votes to pass it.
Right. So it's similar to how the zoning board and the planning board
Right.
work, they're 5-member boards, regardless of how many people show up. Quorum is 3, they need 3 votes,
Right.
well, 4 votes but they need those numbers regardless of how many people are actually appointed onto the committee, and the CPA is just the same way. But other committees
So,
function.
I misheard you there, say it again?
Regardless of how many people are actually appointed to those spots, this committee is a 9-member committee, so quorum is always at 5, and it always takes 5 votes to pass anything, even if, so tonight, 6 members present, it still takes 5 votes to approve anything, whereas other committees might have 6 members present, so there's quorum, but you only take a majority of those present to pass anything.
So it's like the Park and Rec, when we have a Park and Rec meeting.
So you'd only need 4 if you had that.
Whatever you
Right.
have, it's the amount of
If there
people
were
that are
7.
there,
Right.
City council operates, like last night, we had 7 out of the 9 members showed up, so anything that passed still had to get 5 votes
Yeah.
out of the 7. You know, in other words, you can't do it with, because there was only 7, you couldn't do it with 4 and say you had a majority of the people present. And so that's how the council works. I think most, and you're saying this is how CPAs are set up by the state, so we have to go that way, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, I could look into it, but it's definitely the city charter.
That's the city charter, all the
The city
boards.
charter says that,
Right.
and I'm pretty sure that language came from the state. It was written weirdly when the legislation was first written in 2001, and then there was clarification guidance that came out, and that was how it was interpreted, that the committee needs the majority of the membership always, regardless of how many people show up at the meeting.
Well, majority is different than a quorum, though.
Well, the quorum is the majority.
Of the
Quorum
total
is not the
body.
majority.
Of the total body, not those
If
seated
you don't
at the
have, if you
table.
have 6 people, you can have a majority with 4, but that's not a quorum.
No, that's what I'm saying, is it needs the quorum number for a majority vote. So in this case, 6 people needs 5
You still need
votes,
the
5
5.
affirmative votes to pass anything, not 4.
Correct, which is more than a majority.
If we ran into a conflict where we couldn't get 5 people, then I think just put the meeting out till the following month or something.
The committee can't meet if there's not a quorum.
I mean, that'd be pretty sad, we can't get 5 people out
Nine.
of the CPA. I mean, this is a pretty important board. If we can't get 5 people, then there's something wrong.
Well, that's why I just wanted to confirm that indeed 5 was a hard and fast number. It sounds like it is. If you just double check that, I just wanted to make sure, because we were writing it into the rules, and I wanted to know that it came from the state or that it was indeed something.
It's definitely in the city charter, so
It's fixed.
it's fixed, but the city can change the city charter.
Yeah, but yeah.
But-
With a sting from the CPA committee, which I'm not willing to
Probably.
do, really. I mean, I just wanted to know what our restrictions are if we end up with 6 people or something like that. We've had a pretty active CPA, but give another 5 years or 10 years.
You never know, right? As I said, I think
Things
it
go in
was,
cycles. So.
this particular time, it was what the city council did at the meeting and had the press there. They actually put out an article and said that the city was looking for members. So I think that's what spurred 4 people to come through. I think where you would have more of a problem is on the individual committees. I know, like the historical member for a while, nobody wanted to do it. And Harry was thinking of going from planning, but then you gotta get somebody from planning to.
Oh, I'm on the historical commission.
No, but what I'm saying, remember, we couldn't get a member from the historical commission.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's where I got.
No, that's why John came on, but I'm saying for a while, you were saying, geez, maybe I gotta go and be
Well,
about.
he was talking about having something to do with,
Right.
with the city, and I said, well, look, it's a great opportunity for you, and
No, so that's what I'm saying, I think those are the ones that certain committees, instead, make sure you always got those
Right.
members and put the pressure
I
on
think you
them.
made the right move, right?
And put the.
I'll ask you all that.
I think you did.
I think it was a good. Anything else tonight?
Motion to adjourn.
Any further
Cut to the
discussion?
chase, Jay.
All in favor? Aye. Gentlemen.